Now, UN Security Council has condemned the deadly raid of an international flotilla taking aid to Gaza. At least 9 pro-Palestinian activists were killed and dozens injured when Israeli troops stormed the vessels. Paula Sleer is in the Israeli port city of ASHDOD, where the ships have arrived, and she's been assessing the growing chorus of condemnation.
International condemnation against Israel is coming fast and furious from all quarters of the globe. You need to remember that this attack happened in international waters. 9 people have been killed. They were part of a humanitarian international aid effort to try and get supplies to the people of Gaza, who have been suffering under an economic blockade for the past 3 years. The statistics suggest that as many as 80% of Gaza's population survive on handouts from relief organizations. 40% of Gazans are unemployed. Germany and Britain have both criticized Israel's excessive use of force, but there are many other European cities who are coming on board and saying the same. The Arab League is about to hold an emergency summit. This is a call from Damascus, the Arab League urging its members to cut all ties with Israel. The European Union is also calling for a thorough investigation, while yesterday, Monday afternoon, at the United Nations headquarters in New York, an emergency session was held. Now, a presidential statement was adopted that criticized the actions that led to yesterday morning's violence. Prior to that statement being adopted, many UN member states criticizing Israel's behavior and condemning the actions of the Israeli army. My colleague Marina Portnaya had this to say.
This presidential statement condemns the use of force and deeply regrets any kind of lives, all of the lives lost and the injuries that were sustained when Israelis attacked this flotilla. As the presidential statement read, they are calling the Security Council for the immediate release of all the ships that were taken by the Israeli forces, as well as the release of the civilians. The Security Council is calling for this humanitarian aid to actually finally proceed to Gaza and finally help all the people that the aid was destined for. Security Council is also calling for a full investigation, a prompt and impartial investigation.
We believe that an impartial investigation has to deal with all the issues that are involved in this incident, all of the acts of violence that have created this deadly incident.
Conduct that investigation. Which specific body or organization?
Well, the UN will have to determine this.
We are also interested in knowing exactly what happened, and we know exactly what happened. It was an aggression by the Israeli armed forces in international waters, which is violation of international law, and that investigation should lead to finding the reasons why orders were given to those commandos to open fire against civilians.
The U.S. has stopped short of condemning Israel's actions. The U.S. has expressed regret and expressed condolences for the lives that have been lost, the injuries suffered of this incident, but the U.S. says that they are still looking into the situation to find out the facts. So I can tell you that the majority and overwhelming opinions that were voiced in the Security Council by the international community was a condemnation of Israel's actions.
Meanwhile, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has declared 3 days of national mourning. He calls this nothing short of a massacre. Tens of thousands of protesters in cities across Europe and the Middle East have taken to the streets. There they've clashed with police, in some instances throwing stones and hurling bottles, and police being forced to respond with tear gas. The protesters are holding flags condemning Israel's actions, showing support for Palestine, showing support for the people of Gaza, and it's likely that in the coming hours and the coming days these protests will gain momentum. The last of the 6 ships of the flotilla have disembarked here at the port of ASHDOD in Israel. The passengers are disembarking, and contrary to what we saw yesterday, this process has been peaceful. The Israelis say that as soon as this process is finished, they plan to deport some 700 passengers, which is the figure being bandied about as to how many people were on board those 6 ships. Now, the Israelis are insisting that those who refuse to reveal who they are, those who refuse to be deported from this country, will be arrested and imprisoned. We understand that the investigation is to determine what organizations organizations these individuals who come from countries around the world belong to. Those that refuse to reveal their countries of origin will undergo some kind of biometric investigation, and this will be with fingerprinting and other such means so that the Israelis can determine exactly who they are. Now, news just in is that organizers of this Free Gaza movement have announced that they are sending another 2 ships to Gaza within the next 2 days. What remains to be seen is whether or not the scenes that unfolded yesterday, Monday morning, will repeat themselves, or whether indeed Israel would adhere to the international condemnation that it is facing.